All right, let's talk about the incredible story of Major League Baseball. We're going to unpack its journey of constant, and I mean constant, reinvention. How a simple pastime grew into this absolute cultural and economic powerhouse we know today.
So, this is really the central question, isn't it? How on earth did a 19th century game for gentlemen become this global, multi-billion-dollar sport? It's a story packed with powerful personalities, game-changing moments, and, as you'll see, a whole lot of reinvention.
So, where does a story like this even begin? Well, it wasn't with some single flash of genius. It started in the kind of scattered, often chaotic world of 19th century amateur clubs. The first great transformation was just figuring out how to turn all that passion into an actual profession. You can really see the path to stability happen in three key steps. In 1871, the first pro league forms, but honestly, it was kind of the Wild West. Players would jump from team to team for a better paycheck. Then, just 5 years later, the National League comes along and brings some much-needed order by introducing formal player contracts. And then the big one, 1901, the American League is formed, setting up that classic NL versus AL rivalry that still defines Major League Baseball today. Okay, so the leagues are established. The next revolution? It happened right there on the field. The game was about to get a whole lot louder, all thanks to one man who would completely redefine what it even meant to be a hitter.
First, you have to understand what the game was like before him. They call it the dead ball era for a reason. It was gritty. They'd use one single, soft, mushy baseball for as long as possible, sometimes for over 100 pitches. And the pitchers? They could do almost anything to it, scuff it, spit on it, which made the ball incredibly hard to hit. The whole game was about strategy, not power. Think bunts and stolen bases, not towering home runs. Those were almost unheard of. And then, just a few simple changes completely flipped the sport on his head. After 1920, the league brought in brighter, harder baseballs, and, this is key, they started replacing them often. They also banned the spitball. And just like that, the focus wasn't on scratching out a single run anymore. It was all about hitting the ball as hard and as far as you possibly could. And the icon of this new era? None other than Babe Ruth. In 1920, he hit 54 home runs. Now, to put that into perspective, the next best player had 19. 19! He wasn't just breaking records, he was creating a whole new way to play the game. The home run became the main event, and baseball was never, ever the same. So the game itself had changed on the field, but its next evolution would be, you could argue, even more profound. This is where baseball started to reflect the changing face of America itself, both socially and, well, just look at a map. For over half a century, an invisible but unbreakable wall stood in Major League Baseball, the color barrier. Black players, no matter how talented, were completely barred from the league. They were forced to showcase their immense talent in separate and incredibly competitive Negro leagues. This brings us to one of the most pivotal moments in American sports history. On April 15, 1947, Jackie Robinson stepped onto the field for the Brooklyn Dodgers. And with that one act of immense courage, he didn't just integrate a baseball team, he became a key figure in the civil rights movement. So, just as the game was becoming more inclusive, it was also becoming truly national. For decades, MLB was pretty much confined to the Northeast and the Midwest. But in 1958, when the Dodgers and Giants packed up and moved to California, that was a seismic shift. Baseball was suddenly a coast-to-coast affair, opening up massive new television markets that would fuel its financial growth for decades. So the league was growing and making more money, but for nearly a century, the players themselves had almost no power over their own careers. That was about to change in a labor battle that would redefine the economics of sports forever. At the heart of the fight was this thing called the reserve clause. It was a single line in every player's contract that effectively tied them to one team. For life. You had no leverage, no ability to test your value on the open market, and no freedom to choose where you played. You basically belonged to the team. Well, in 1969, outfielder Curt Flood decided to challenge this system. When he was traded, he refused to go, and instead sued Major League Baseball. His reasoning was summed up in this incredibly powerful quote: "A well-paid slave is nonetheless a slave." He was fighting for his rights as a worker and as a human being. Now, Flood ultimately lost his case in the Supreme Court, but his sacrifice totally opened the floodgates. Then, in 1974, a contract dispute made pitcher Catfish Hunter a free agent, and his massive new salary showed everyone what was possible.
The final nail in the coffin came a year later, with the Messersmith-McNamee ruling, which officially killed the reserve clause and ushered in the era of free agency.
And the effect was just staggering. Before free agency, the average salary was around $50,000. Just 5 years later, it had more than tripled. And today, it's nearly $5 million. This wasn't just a raise, it was a fundamental transfer of power and wealth from the owners to the players. And that brings us to the last few decades, a period that's really been defined by data, a healthy dose of controversy, and the game finally truly going global.
You can really see 3 more revolutions that have shaped the modern game. First, the late 90s brought the controversial steroid era, where home run records were just falling left and right, but all of it was under this huge cloud of suspicion. That was followed by the Moneyball revolution, where data analytics completely changed how teams were built and how players were valued. And then most recently in 2023, you've got major rule changes like the pitch clock, all designed to create a faster, more action-packed game for a new generation of fans.
And maybe the biggest change of all is simply who is playing the game. Today, the faces of baseball are international superstars like Japan's Shohei Ohtani and Venezuela's Ronald Acuna Jr. The league is a true global melting pot, attracting the absolute best talent from all over the world.
So when you look at the whole picture, from a gentleman's club game to a global spectacle, baseball has proven it can constantly adapt and evolve, which really just leaves you wondering, as we look to the future, what on earth comes next for America's pastime?